Okay, we'll call to order the May 28th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Bobby, call the roll, please.
Rich Daly.
Here.
Gigi DeBeck.
Here.
Really? Your voice changed. Your voice changed.
Lack of sleep, I'm sorry.
Gigi DeBeck. Paul Fisher.
Here.
Tundra King. I'm sorry.
We're just all off today.
Carrie Ann Worley.
Here.
David Mingus. Carla Coleman.
Here.
Fred Stacer.
Here.
Man, just make sure you guys' mics are on.
Okay. So Carrie Ann Worley's sitting in for Tundra King tonight, and who's Dave sitting in for?
Robert Hartzell.
Robert Harsel. Oh, yes, he couldn't make it back into the country. I don't know if that was a legal problem. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, he's on vacation. Thank you. All right, and next item on our agenda is our traditional 30-second moment of silence. So at this point, if you would, we'll have our 30-second moment of silence. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 26th, 2025 meeting, because we had no April meeting. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions, corrections, anything? Anybody comments on the minutes? Seeing none, Bobby, call the roll on the minutes.
Rich Daly.
Yes.
Paul Fisher.
Yes.
Gigi DeBeck.
Yes.
David Mingus. Yes. Carrie Ann Worley.
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes.
Fred Stacer.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is if there are individuals tonight who will be testifying, we ask you at this time to stand and be sworn in by Bobby. Thank you. If you'd like to speak, please stand at this time and raise your hand. Thank you.
Please stand and raise your right hand if you're going to be speaking tonight.
It's okay. We're not going to hurt you if you speak. We promise. Go ahead.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay. With that, the first item on our agenda is excuse me, is an update to the resiliency development standards. I'm sorry. You're presenting? I don't know your name, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I apologize. My name is Christina Viala. I am the city's sustainability coordinator. I'm over in development service, planning, zoning.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, go ahead. You want to make your presentation? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Mrs. Worley, you...
So I just wanted, for the record, just make a note that I am also part of the Economic Development Board, and so I have heard this presentation before.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Mr. Fisher?
I'm also on the EDC and have heard this presentation before.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Mrs. Viala.
Thank you, members of the board. I'm excited to introduce the updated Resilient Development Standards. This is part of our broader sustainability project portfolio. This builds on previous initiative, but we've built on that foundation with lessons learned. We've held workshops with various members of our team, the planning team, our principal planners, Jean Dolan and Max Weems, members of the EDC board, and a variety of community stakeholders. Their input was very valuable and integrated into a useful set of standards. Our consultant is here today, Carla Ebenbach from Ebenbach LLC. She was a key instrumental partner in translating all that feedback into the document where she's presenting tonight. So this effort reflects our ongoing sustainability work, whether it's water conservation strategy with expanding our water reuse main, or energy efficiency. We're replacing light bulbs in our building with LED technology. And with that, I will turn it over to our consultant. She will walk you over our new and updated standards. Thank you for your time and your continued support.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. It's nice to be here in front of you to bring this very much vetted set of updated standards to the zoning
I'm sorry,
code.
ma'am. Just for the record, you have to put your name and working address on the record.
Of course, I'm Carla Ebenbach, and I'm with Ebenbach Consulting, LLC, based in Coral Gables, Florida.
Thank you. Go ahead.
What we're talking to you about tonight is something that is applicable to major site plans only or major rehabilitations. And it's looking forward to your feedback and your support to bring it to fruition and build Pompano Beach stronger for the future. So again, my name is Carla Ebenbach. I have an urban planning consultancy based in Coral Gables, Florida. And my firm was hired by the city to analyze and recommend improvements to what is now the existing sustainable development standards, to optimize and increase the focus and efficacy and ease of use of those standards by staff and developers alike. So my firm has been working closely with the city staff, and we come today with a final vetted draft that's been heartily endorsed by the EDC, and I also learned the CRA has provided a letter of support. As for myself, I work in South Florida on sustainability and resilience related policy and code. As an urban planning consultant, I am AICP and lead green associate credentialed. I'm the chair of the American Planning Association National Sustainable Communities Division, serving planning professionals across the country with resources, information, and tools related to topics just like this one. So for today's presentation, I'm going to go through quickly and demonstrate how the enhanced resilient development standards help Pompano to build stronger and make the city incrementally more resilient with each new major development. Specifically, the standards will align with the city's goals and the goals of the county and the region, with which you may already be familiar. I will show you how it is accessible and user-friendly for developers, and it's harmoniously integrated into existing city processes. It makes the city as a whole more resilient into the future and adds value to projects built in the city. So I'll explain these 5 characteristics in turn and describe what's in them and how they're intended to work. So first of all, it aligns with the goals of the city. It aligns with the goals of the county and the region. As you are probably aware, it is compatible with the county's carbon conscious business program, as well as the climate action plan, the regional climate action plan, and the ULI's business case for resilience. And of course, it's a major piece of the Pompano Beach sustainability project portfolio. So as to some of the nuts and bolts of that, it's been renamed Resilient Development Standards from Sustainable Development Standards to be more reflective of its purpose, which is to prepare the built environment for the needs in the area of energy resilience, flood and heat mitigation, and human health. And generally, in drafting these standards, we prioritize creating flexible and ample options. We've grown the number of options substantially that a developer may choose to incorporate in their project and earn the requisite points. All of the items that we include as choices in the standards are possible to complete before the certificate of occupancy is issued. And so therefore it can be reasonably evaluated at the plan review stage. We let the experts do the vetting, such as through certifications from industry reps or letters of certification from those project representatives who can certify. Point system is laid out in table form for the code, with supporting detail and illustrations in a manual that would be available online. I believe you have these materials in your packet. We would include complementary resources, helpful links, etc. As I said, universally applicable to major site plans of any land use, based now on a 100-point scale, and choosing options from at least 2 of the 7 categories. And you can actually earn 100 points in this scale with only 3 options out of the now 52 options available. There are 6 main categories plus a 7th that leaves room for innovative solutions and flexibility. And in this slide, you can see on the, I'll point out that on the left-hand side is the current Sustainable Development Standards. On the right is an excerpt of the new proposed Resilient Development Standards. And what I'm aiming to show you in this slide is that the code has evolved since the Sustainable Development Standards were introduced in 2009. So items that are now baseline in the local code are still included as options in the current Sustainable Development Standards. And so naturally developers choose those because it's the easiest thing to do. They're already doing them because of other requirements. The staff at the city see that they see these options selected, such as hurricane-resistant structures, brownfield site redevelopment, infill development, building overhangs, white roofs, Energy Star appliances, and yes, those are all part of the code elsewhere. So the other 19 options in the current standards largely go untouched, and so for that reason alone, the current standards are not working as hard as they could to increase sustainability or resilience in the city. They don't add as much as they could. So we've eliminated those redundant options, and we've added many new and useful options. We've also removed ones that are hard to assess prior to the certificate of occupancy or hard to monitor afterwards. And thus far, the city's development review staff, who have been intimately involved in reviewing these and commenting, they have shown us that they are highly supportive of this update. We've added many new options. As I said, there are now 52 options as opposed to the previous 25. So there are many more choices and ways to accomplish green features in the project based on what works best for the project itself. The current standards, again on the left, now require either 10, 12, or 18 points total, dependent on the specific use proposed. This is simpler, what we're proposing here, because it applies to any land use, and it is based on a 100-point system for any project coming forward in Pathway 1. So Pathway 1 is meeting the resilient development standards by choosing options. There is a second pathway, which is to satisfy the updated requirements for how you might use a third-party certification. And we would like to celebrate and utilize this possibility as a way of rewarding a project for including green features. And we've looked at those options very carefully to determine which third-party certifications can be utilized and can be documented prior to the certificate of occupancy or the plan review stage. And it's a big plus for the ability to implement those and enforce, because we've indicated specifically what documents for each third-party certification must be provided to demonstrate satisfaction of that use of the Pathway 2. So, second characteristic and the third characteristic that I mentioned about these resilient development standards are that essentially they're easy to use. On the one hand, they're easy for developers to use, and they're also easy for the city staff to use. So basically, It's simpler than it has been to date, and for staff, they've reviewed it against the process they currently go through, and they have found that it works. They've sort of beta tested it. Letters from the engineer or other technical leads will be helpful requirements, or outside industry certifications of products or equipment. So the city staff do not need to be the technical experts. And here's just an illustration of the simplicity of the process. It's just very much what it already is. Instead of a sustainability narrative, the proposer provides a resilience narrative with the same sort of description of how the points are being demonstrated or earned, and the supporting documents and plans and letters. And once those are satisfied, the standards have been met. There are ample options for the projects to earn points, and there's also flexibility in the system such that you can earn big chunks of points with items that are weighted more heavily in the point system. And then there are others that are, a smaller number of points, which are good for filling the gaps and getting you to 100. And there are just some examples up there on the screen of some of those things. And, for example, in the highest point options, you might have things like pervious paving, EV chargers, modular suspended paving systems, buried utility lines, et cetera. And then some of the smaller items might have to do with landscape or bike storage or ride share and that kind of thing. So the options are very wide ranging, but they're very flexible to meet the project needs the best. And let's see, I might have skipped one here. Ah, yes. So there are clear instructions in this supplementary manual, which would not be a part of the code, but which would be available online. And the 52 options are shown on the table in code, and the more detailed information in the manual will tell the proposer about the location and the extent of the feature that's being requested, the technical expertise that's required, the required documents, and the number of points that you earn. The fourth characteristic I mentioned is that these resilient development standards actually do build resilience with each project that is completed. Government alone can't meet those needs for resilient development in Pompano Beach, so we must partner with the private sector to do so, and this is a very good way to do it. One of the essential things about this new code is that it builds various kinds of resilience into the environment, specifically energy, flood, heat, and health. And to even make that simpler, to keep life dry, cool, safe, and keep us mobile in the face of changing environmental conditions. It's flexible for specific needs and desires of the developer, as I said. It raises the bar for achieving a resilient state of being for the community as a whole and for individual properties. And it incorporates best practices in the planning for resilience. And here's how, as I've illustrated here, how it builds in resilience better. Each option contributes to one of those areas that I mentioned: keeping dry, keeping cool, keeping safe, keeping mobile. And it's just full of all of these new kinds of options. So baseline requirements that are now elsewhere in the code, as I mentioned before, have been eliminated. And so those will no longer be available as options when one is filling out a resilience narrative. Instead, it moves towards directly mitigating floodwater, heat, diversifying and managing energy use, and ensuring mobility choice. And the heart of resilient development best practices, this new part of the code is going to be on a par with other best practices nationwide and in the region, even in other areas not too far away, such as North Bay Village, which has its own point system. but this one is a bit more detailed than that. But will be also on a par with Fort Lauderdale, which has net zero goals. It has a sustainability action plan, race to zero, et cetera. Delray Beach with its green development standards, and a number of others throughout South Florida. So we'll be in good company, keep up with the peers, and we should do this, of course, because it's hot and wet here, and it's only going to get more hot and wet. So these kinds of changes will allow Pompano Beach to thrive in spite of the flooding and heat that it will experience. It'll allow it to leverage choice in energy sources. It will allow the city to conserve environmental resources that also mitigate water and heat. And it will make Pompano Beach the beautiful and desirable place that it is. It will keep it that way. And finally, it will also align with the county and regional standards. But let's focus on one of these important documents, which is the ULI business case, which you may be familiar with already. It's been very influential in the Southeast Florida area. It's a 2020 document which examined Southeast Florida for implementing resilience measures in public infrastructure investments, which granted is different than what we're talking about with this update to the code. But it's considers the same issues of flooding and heat, storms, impacts on health and well-being. And the cost-benefit analysis that was done in this study argues that adapting the built environment for resilience against these issues has significant long-term cost savings implications simply by avoiding the projected impacts. And on the flip side of that positive message is that the costs associated with not adapting, for, in this case, not investing in public infrastructure, such as roadway reconstruction, floodwater parks, seawalls, et cetera, finds those costs to be very high. And again, while that's about public infrastructure, you can argue that the collective impact of private development that would not be built in a resilient manner otherwise could also be very staggering. The fifth and final characteristic I wanted to talk about with the board is how resilient features in projects add value to projects. There is potential value to be found in operational savings from many of the features that are included in the standards. There are end user savings. There's the potential for increased property value when these green features are appreciated by consumers, and increased ability to market and position developments in a favorable way. There are, in terms of the operational and end user savings, these would be in the form of energy cost savings, potential insurance savings, potential tax savings. It's an evolving landscape for that right now, but that is also a potential benefit. And in terms of property value, building smarter and stronger for resilience increases the marketability of projects in the up-marketing aspect as well as the resale aspect. The dollar value of green features is increasingly understood by the development community or a growing subsection of it. On here is an example from Gensler where they talk about features that are increasingly sought out by buyers. They term the global wellness market. It's poised to reach $2 billion by 2034, they say, because of the desire for healthier spaces, open space, walkability, access to nature. And there's already some indication of appetite for that right here in Pompano Beach. Stellar Homes, which specializes in developments with standard green features and whose projects are often certified by the Florida Green Building Coalition, include features such as drought-resistant landscapes in their designs standard. EV readiness, water and energy conservation measures, painting and flooring options for healthy indoor air quality. This developer is already doing this as sort of its basic service to its buyers. And Gensler says here, sustainable homes are more than just a trend. They are the future of smarter, healthier, and more cost-effective living. So I've touched on all 5 of those characteristics that I wanted to, and so I thank you for hearing me hearing this presentation. And I just want to leave you with the idea that building in a resilient way is going to create a future Pompano Beach that is cutting edge, that is attractive, that is robust and smart, and most importantly, it's poised to be strong and resilient in the face of future changes in our environment. So again, my name is Carla Ebenbach, and I'll be glad to answer any questions about what you've heard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Would folks like to ask consultant any questions? Yes. Allie.
Thank you. How did we arrive at the 100-point total? Like, was this number strategically thought about in any capacity, or I'm just curious, like, is each development is only 100 points at this point, or each project is only 100 points? Like, can you walk me through your thought process?
Sure. Well, part of the process was to look at what's being done around the country, and some of the newer examples that I found had sort of more of a level of detail like that. While it's proportionately, things are weighted the same way you would weight things on a scale of 20 or 10, there is a little bit more of a fine grain that you're able to have with a 100-point scale. And it's, as I say, it doesn't make it harder to achieve. It just adds that fine grain of detail.
May I continue?
Good.
Thank you. And I know that we probably don't have this data handy, but I'm just wondering, maybe staff can speak on this. On average, how many features would you say each project under the previous standards met versus what do we expect to see on the current standards? My concern is this doesn't go far enough. I'd like to see a higher number of points need to be reached.
Okay. I like the way you think. I believe that the letters that we saw as examples had maybe 3 or 4 on average, but I'll let Max speak to that.
I'll just say the same thing. It's usually about 3, 4, sometimes 5 examples to get to the 12 points that were required previously. And as you saw in this presentation, sometimes it can be 3 or 4 items to get to the 100 points. And obviously, depending on the development, whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial, of the 52 points, they'll choose the ones that are appropriate for their development. 52 categories. They'll choose those that are relevant for their application. So while it's 100 points for each type of development, what they'll choose will be relevant to their application, and the value of that choice is appropriately weighted.
Thank you, but we're not really seeing an increase in the average number of required features, in my opinion. Or is that...
Oh no, that's so. What we're seeing is a change in what we're requiring. Our point system that was available before was far too lenient and had too many options that were just otherwise required anyways. And so we weren't actually ending up with resilient development features from the former Sustainable Development Standards. Everything that's identified on this list is not otherwise required. So we are automatically ending up with more resilient development than formerly required.
Okay.
Max, could you just introduce yourself for the record, please?
Sure. Max Weems, Principal Planner, Development Services.
Okay, Mrs. Coleman.
I know how much work has gone into this, and I congratulate you for that work. It's wonderful. I almost feel like I need to disclose that I'm a former executive director of ULI in South Florida. But you mentioned some communities that have similar codes now. Could you give us a pretty comprehensive list of who you know in South Florida that's doing this?
Well, the only one that I know that has a point system that is the most comparable is North Bay Village. The point systems that I have found that are like currently or recently developed have been elsewhere in the country. There is a fantastic example, for example, in Chicago, which came out last summer. It's a wonderful example to look at. Toronto, and some other cities in the Midwest. So I did have to look a little farther afield. So in that sense, this isn't the exact same product that you're going to find in your neighbor's codes per se, but it is aligned with good practice in the industry of sustainability planning, and it is aligned with the priorities that have been established through other planning documents and policy statements of other organizations here in Southeast Florida, such as the Southeast Florida Compact, such as Broward County itself.
One of the reasons why I'm asking that, Mr. Chair, if I can
Please,
continue,
continue.
is a piece of legislation that's been passed this year. And I think it's important that we put on the record that this is not more burdensome than our previous system. It's just more fine-tuning and more options than our previous system, because there's a piece of legislation on the governor's desk right now that says anything that is more burdensome to rebuild can't be forced to rebuild to standards that were not in place in August 2024. And I'm sure you're familiar with that too. And I just want to make sure that we're putting on the record here that this is not more burdensome. It is more choices.
Precisely. That is exactly what it is. And I therefore very worthy to proceed with it. And if the law changes, then we'll see, what we need to do then. But for the time being, I believe that, as you say, we are simply making it more effective, the capacity that it already exists.
And again, that's rebuilding projects, I understand, but I don't know who may try to apply that to new projects as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so I have several things. Today, and this is probably a staff question, today, is it only major site plans that have this burden? Minors do not?
Yes, we kept the same applicability of the Sustainable Development Standards to the Resilient Development Standards. So it's all major site plans have to obtain some points from the standards. So we didn't change types of development this would be applied to.
So small townhouse developments wouldn't be?
A small townhouse, if it's a minor site plan, so that's less
Yeah,
than 15
typically
units.
they're minor site plans if they're small. I mean, not huge projects, but small ones.
Correct.
And so, okay.
Right.
All right. We'll talk about that some other time. Question, this is probably for you, Max, too. So in looking at and I was not able to participate this year in the flood, is it CRS?
The CRS?
Yeah, I wasn't, because I was off.
Public participation, something or other, PPI?
Yes. Yeah, well, I was, but I was on that board, but it happened to be when I couldn't participate. So in the section in the front, or category 1, which is flood resilience, has that been looked at relative to where we are at in terms of our flood?
Points for CRS?
Yes.
Well, CRS, we can obtain points for having higher regulatory standards, which we already obtain, and then we have to have all of our elevation certificates recertified on an annual basis. So that will still, we're not getting more points as a result of this.
Okay, so, but I mean, I assume somebody looked at it and said, okay, well, this is compatible, it's not compatible, it's whatever, relative. So, I mean,
not
obviously,
hurting our
if we were
placement.
able to get like pond basins for 100-year flood or 500-year flood design, I'm sure that would somehow, long-term, could help on the CRS level or something.
I mean, speaking frankly, the structure of the CRS program is not designed to enable cities to get every opportunity to get
No,
more points.
yeah, I'm with
It's kind
you
of
on
an
that.
insurance program, so they're
Sure.
not really interested in.
Yeah.
And
Well, I just thought it's similar stuff. You're talking about flood resilience, and so I was just curious if that had
should
been-
we get substantial participation in that type of element, like these in the flood basins?
and
across
perhaps we
the
might be
city?
lucky and
A
get
lot of the CRS items are based off of a percentage of participation
Right.
across the city. So it would take a lot of flood
Sure.
basins to gain us enough points to make it valuable to pursue that category in the CRS program.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm fine with that. I had on the second category, and I don't know who needs to answer this question. I had a question because there's one set of point system for rooftop solar, and then there's other for another section where there's mini wind turbine installation. And what I didn't understand is like the first category, 2.1, which is rooftop solar installation minimum, you get 20 points if you are 10%, 10% of your energy needs come from that. You get 20 points. Why would, if you get 10% on 2.8B, which is 10% of your energy needs came from wind, why would the numbers be, why would the number be different? You get 15 points if you do it with wind, but you get 20 points if you do it with solar. What is there a reasoning behind that? And it's also true with the enhanced ones, like 20% is a different number system. Like solar's 40 points, and in wind, it's 30 points with the same. So can you explain that to me?
I think I can address that.
Yeah.
There are a few items in this set of standards that are a bit more aspirational because they're not in full and regular use yet in this
Okay.
community. So those items might have been rewarded a little bit more in order to make them attractive to consider. But it may not be something that most developers on average would go for. So we try to sweeten the pot a little bit.
So you think it's that less people are using solar than are using wind turbines?
No, the opposite.
Oh, there's more people using wind turbine? Oh, wait, no. How did I say that now? Now I forget how I said that. So more people are using solar, so you give them more points than if you do it with turbines? What I don't understand is if you're saving energy by a wind turbine
I
or
misspoke.
by a
You're right.
solar panel, how does that different in terms of what helps society? Let me put it in a very broad way. How's that?
Yeah, I guess you're right. There might be other options that maybe are aligned with what I said before. But
Okay.
I think in this case, the wind turbine option is considered less likely to occur,
Okay.
actually. So we're helping people get over that hurdle to do solar, which we think is probably
Or-
a very viable green investment.
okay.
And so I guess in that case, we rewarded the solar in a greater way than we rewarded the wind turbine.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think that what little research, you're the expert here, but what little research I've done into it is the wind turbines are not as expensive an investment usually as the solar is. So you get more points in that instance for the solar because you're making more of a financial investment in them than you are in the wind.
That certainly was a consideration for a lot of the options in terms of like the level of investment that would be expected of a developer to accomplish the option.
Okay. Farther down on that same page, there was a discussion, or there's point system for, it says generator to power essential functions over 72-hour period, and then there's a option below that, 6 to 8 days. What drives that? The fuel? Because
Industry standards, the type of equipment that would be installed to accomplish 72-hour period and
So
versus
it's how
6
much
to 8
they're
is
able
quite
to
different.
hold, in other words, they're able to hold whatever their fuel system allows them to hold that or something? Is that what that is?
So in our DRC, our fire department frequently asks if developers are incorporating these types of storm-ready systems. And, you know, we wanted to give a little bit of an incentive to support that. And this was that option. The fuel would likely be the way that you would power this type of system with like a tank either above or below ground.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, if you had big generators, that would certainly be the case. I mean, but some are driven by natural gas. They literally, unless the natural gas system goes down, they're going to go way past 6 to 8 days. They're going to go until their machine blows up or something. I mean, because they have an endless source of natural gas or something. That's why when I first read it, I was like, I wonder what they're getting at, although I got to admit I have put in diesel ones that had tanks. So, you know. Don't blame me. I'm just a builder. I'm sorry. You know. But okay, so that was based on how long they were able to sustain themselves without having whatever, a diesel truck run around and fill their tank or something like
Correct. It's
Probably.
purely about storm readiness.
that. Okay, okay. All right, Mrs. Coleman, when you read the part on mobility, since you're our multimodal guru of, yeah. Did you see anything in there that?
No, I
Okay.
liked what they have.
Okay,
I
good.
liked what they have. I thought that it was really interesting on the charging stations and the different kinds of charging stations. I think was a great differentiation. And that we are recognizing something besides car-centric mobility in here as well, which is something we're trying to get to, and that the Broward County Planning Council is about to really emphasize multimodal over just vehicular traffic in their Broward Next plan. I do have one more question for her, though, when
Go
you
ahead.
finish.
No, go ahead.
Where are we going to see the biggest pushback from the developers?
It's a good question. In some conversations, I think pushback maybe take the form of options you don't see chosen. Because in my conversations with people in the building industry, there are some that are just easier to accomplish. One architect friend says that solar and interior finishes is an easy way. He works in California. Is an easy way to meet the standards they have out there. So if they're asked for green features, they'll often pick those. So I don't know that we'll have pushback because we have so many options. There are ways to accomplish it readily. But there may be options that we find over time with experience that aren't chosen as much.
Codes are living things. Maybe if we really value those, we'll add more points to them as we move along.
Yes.
Mr. Dally, go ahead.
Just actually, staff, that would be a question. Are we going to, and you know, Ms. Coleman actually brought up a very good point here. Is this going to be a static set of numbers, or can we adjust these as we go on? Can we bring it back for, you know, future text amendments? Say that we see that developers are overutilizing one or another. Can we set timelines on examining what's being used, and then from there decide if we want to adjust the numbers to point maybe higher numbers for things that we're looking for and lower numbers for things that are getting overall utilized?
Yeah, of course. You guys know we love text amendments around here. So
That's all we're doing tonight.
Yeah. We will certainly be evaluating this as we go. You know, with staff or with Carla, we'll be able to tweak this as needed. I just also want to point out that we did have a lot of interactions with various developers in reviewing these guidelines so that we were confident that any pushback we receive wouldn't be any different from all the pushback we already receive when we're taking anyone through our DRC process and just, you know, making people comply with our code. So I think that, as Carla stated, there are abundant options here that will satisfy all of the applications that we receive. And we created a category at the end of the list for developers to propose alternatives for a value of up to, I think, 30 points for innovative, resilient alternatives. So that's something that we'll have to evaluate in-house. Of course, if that's something that's taken advantage of in ways that we didn't anticipate, that'll also be something we have to evaluate. But we do not intend to give away 30 points for, anyways. We really did seek to create something that is accommodatable by the development community and that has flexibility for whatever applications we may receive.
Thank you. And I would like to echo Mrs. Coleman's comments earlier. This is phenomenal. I'm very excited to see this.
Okay. Anybody else? To follow up on your resiliency innovation thing, the last project that I did before I closed my company, we put a multi-million-dollar addition onto the world's largest manufacturing plant of yacht air conditioning here in Pompano. And when we did that, one of the things, these people were really, I saw this as an incredible innovation. They had this internal sustainability program that they did, and they were able to lessen their, I guess you call it carbon footprint. I don't really know all the terms that well, but the garbage that went out of this 100,000-foot factory that had 200 employees at the end of a week could be burned and put into a 55-gallon garbage pail. That was incredible. They got rid of 97% of their waste byproduct by recycling every single thing, their pallets, their plastics, their metals, everything. The only thing they could not get rid of was the garbage that 200 people who eat lunch, create. And that they took and compacted and burned it, and it literally went into one garbage can at the end of a week. And that, I assume, is the type of super resiliency innovation thing that somebody could get some points for.
Not very familiar with
No, I understand.
this type of
I
system.
wasn't either until I built the place, and I was like, you people are like, wow. I was pretty amazed, but.
Perhaps it's so specific that it's not something that we would have accommodated with a certain number of points, but could absolutely be a candidate.
That's for an innovation type of thing. Because they're the only company, I've built for hundreds of businesses, and they were the only people I ever saw do something. And I thought it was incredible. I was just like, wow. Because it had to have cost them money to do it initially anyway, so. I did have one other question in the part about landscaping and burying utility lines. Is that only in overlay districts where we require that today?
So we currently require that all
Commercial?
new site plans, so major developments,
Okay.
underground utilities.
Right.
But there's if they're able to demonstrate that undergrounding creates an insecure circuit or something in the,
Right.
I can't think of.
No, I know what you're saying, yeah, it's a dead end or something like that. It creates something that's
Then
not.
that requirement is waived. So if
Okay.
you have an infill site or a rather small site, or, if the lines are so large that they can't be undergrounded.
Right.
Then there's lots of ways that this is
Circumvented, sure. We've talked about this before, so, yeah.
So we know that infill lots can be undergrounded at great expense, and usually
Sometimes,
that's
yeah.
the desire of the developer more so than our code requirement, and certainly not FP&L, encouraging that. But this is one more way to incentivize the undergrounding of the utility lines.
Okay. Okay, great. And I'd like to echo what the other folks have said. This is. I know it's been a long time coming. You and I talked about this years ago, Max, and then at COVID time, I think it kind of got off and whatever. I mean, I know you've kind of been leading on that, so. Anyway, thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? Does anybody in the audience want to have any questions on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the, and I'm assuming we're looking for a recommendation to the commission, is that correct? Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Coleman, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion, seeing how application LN 722, updated resilient and development standards text amendment meets review standards for the code amendments. I'd like to move approval of this application for consideration by the City Commission.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does anybody have any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, Bobby, call the roll on item number 1, please.
Carla Coleman,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Rich Daly,
Yes.
Gigi Dubeck,
Yes.
David Mingus, Ariane Worley,
Yes.
Fred Stacer.
Yes, thanks a lot. This is great. Great work, folks. Really good. Okay. All right. Next item on our agenda is item number 2, Healthcare Use Code Text Amendment. It's P&Z 25-81501. And Mrs. Dolan, how are you this evening?
Good, thank you, Mr. Chair, Board. Good to see you all again. Jean Dolan, Development Services. So this is a private sector initiated zoning code text amendment to create a new use, the hospital-based off-campus emergency department. So starting off, we have a whole new section for this use. It did not exist in our code before. It will be a permitted use in B3. The definition comes from Chapter 395 of the Florida statutes. Allows outpatient basis services only and does not include any overnight stays. There's no admission at this outpatient emergency. It's strictly outpatient. Internal and external signage is required under the Florida statute that clearly states the facility is not an urgent care facility and is a hospital-affiliated emergency department that charges hospital emergency department rates for services. This was interesting to me that the legislature was concerned more about patients getting confused about where they were going than it was about any kind of external impacts from this use. So we made sure that that requirement was in the definition. So the standards for this use would be, it is not required to be separated from residential uses. It can be open 24 hours a day. It must provide safe and separate emergency vehicle access to the facility. If it is within 500 feet of a single family or two family residential district, it has to be located on a collector or arterial, and all traffic must be directed away from the residential neighborhood. Also, a type C buffer has to be provided along any side property lines that adjoin a neighborhood street. A type C buffer is 10 feet wide with an 8 feet wall in the middle with landscaping on both sides. So it's a significant visual buffer. So to make this internally consistent with the rest of this medical use section in our code, we then modified the urgent care requirements to be similar to the off-campus emergency room because the urgent care will be less intense than this emergency room, so it didn't make any sense to have it have more stringent standards. So urgent care, again, is an outpatient only. It can be open 24 hours a day. It does not have to be separated from single-family or two-family districts. It has to be located on a collector or arterial with traffic directed away from the residential and a type C buffer against any residential side street. So to just give you an idea, we only have 3 urgent care facilities in all of Pompano Beach. And there's one I included on this map, which is in Lighthouse Point because it's so close to Pompano. So number 1 there on the map is in Pompano. It's an MD, or in Lighthouse Point. It's an MD now. It does have single-family homes right up against its eastern property line, so it's not separated from residential. Site number 2 is our newest urgent care facility. It's the Holy Cross Urgent Care on the City Center site. It used to be a phone store, like a T-Mobile or something, and the urgent care moved in. They did have to get a variance for the 500-foot separation because, believe it or not, between that building up against Federal, Cross Federal, and beyond the commercial frontage of Federal, you were still within 500 feet of an RD district, just barely. So the ZBA did give them a variance to the 500-foot requirement, and that now is in business and fully established. The other two on the south end of the city have been there for a long time. Number 3 is actually in a B2 district, so those were put there before we ever adopted any of these medical use standards in 2016. So that wouldn't even be permitted today because it's in B2. It's also within 500 feet of residential, and there's never been any complaints recorded about that facility. That's where all the employees that get a new job at the city go there for their employment physical. So I actually was there in 2010 when I got my first employment physical, and that establishment is still functioning. And then number 4 is like the southernmost property in all of Pompano. It's called Care Spot. It's in the parking lot of a large multifamily residential district. And again, it's not within 500 feet of single family or 2-family, but it is in a residential parking lot. The other changes we made to this medical, this whole code section was to kind of rewrite the whole specialty medical section because we needed to move some uses around. So the medical dental lab was moved up just to make it make more sense, and you read through it. We took out this template approach that was being used in this section, which made things very confusing, particularly when you had 24-hour facilities and then you had another line about overnight treatment. So it got confusing about how can you not have overnight treatment when you're open at night for treating people. So we wanted that to be clarified, that we don't mean you're not being admitted for overnight treatment if you're getting treatment at night as an outpatient. So these are kind of the things we wanted to clear up by getting rid of this template format. So we also rewrote the specialty medical to write specific definitions for each one of the uses that was kind of lumped together under that category, and we created use-specific standards that were more specific to each one of those specific uses. So I also wanted to go over with you how many special medical facility or any kind of medical use special exceptions have been applied for since we created this section in 2016. And it's only 7. So we have less on average than one of these uses a year. So this is not some kind of influx of medical uses that we've experienced. The 2 in red on this map, the first, number 2, was the ambulatory surgical center. And you all will probably remember we did a code amendment to modify the 500-foot distance requirement for that so that it could be located on Sample Road. That is functioning right now and in business. Number 3 is the specialty medical that is here today to do a code amendment. This is the hospital-based emergency room where they wanted to locate it. They got their special exception, but they couldn't get their variances because at the time we didn't have this use in our code, so it was being reviewed as a specialty hospital, which requires a 3-acre site. So this is a much less intense use than an entire hospital, so that's why we're actually adding it to our code so it doesn't have such stringent use-specific standards. All the other ones on here were approved. So there are 7 criteria for getting a zoning code text amendment, and we do believe it meets these 7 criteria, and I detailed that in the staff report. But since this is a private sector initiated amendment, I'm going to let Dennis Mealy kind of go through all those criteria and pitch that to you himself. So we did take this to the Economic Development Council that unanimously recommended approval on March 12, 2025, and staff recommends approval. At this time, we can take questions for staff and then have the applicant presentation, or if you want to just wait and see if the applicant answers your questions, we can do it that way as well.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one clarification. On the directing traffic away from residential neighborhoods, doesn't mandate that. It says to the maximum extent practical.
Is that a question or is
No,
that
it was a comment to
comment?
staff.
Okay. Does anybody want to ask questions at this point, or do we want to hear from the applicant? I think we'd like to hear from. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sure, Mr. Mealy, I'm sorry. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Mealy, 200 East Broward Boulevard, Fort Lauderdale, on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to make a few comments, and then I'm going to also introduce a couple of the people from HCA who are medical experts that I am not to help with this. Thank you. So, Gene actually covered a lot of this, but you'll see in this code amendment, there was really one thing that we were involved in, and that is adding the new use of off-campus hospital-affiliated freestanding emergency room. All of the other changes in this were things that staff either wanted to clean up from prior version of the code, and then also when you look at urgent care, you can't treat it differently really than off-campus emergency room, because an off-campus emergency room is a little bit more than an urgent care. And when the medical experts come up, they'll explain the difference between the two, because it's not a difference in zoning so much, it's a difference in how the thing operates, what kind of professionals are there giving the care and that sort of thing, what kind of diagnostic equipment you have, et cetera. So really, our part of this was that small part of, I think if you look at the ordinance that's in your backup, our part is on page 4 and page 6, the creation of the new category and then the definition of what a freestanding emergency room is. The rest of these things, as I said, are to clean up existing things in the medical use sections of your code, and also to make it that a freestanding emergency room and the urgent care are looked at together. So that's what I was just talking about, so I won't spend more time on it. And then this is the use regulations put in place for the freestanding emergency room. And I heard the question that was just asked by the vice chair. And so if there's strengthening of language that's needed on this access issue, and by all means, recommend that strengthening if you think that's something that you'd like to see. We do know that many of your non-residential uses have similar language of, especially if they're located on a collector or arterial, to direct most of the traffic to the collector or the arterial as opposed to the local streets. And that's what we propose to do. So if the language needs to be tightened up, by all means, tighten it up. Type C buffer, as you know, you have different categories of buffer. A Type C buffer is a good, strong buffer with enough width for landscaping, an 8-foot wall in the middle, landscaping on both sides. In our case, that would really be primarily along our eastern property line, because our western property line is US 1. I know this is a code amendment for the whole city, but of course we have a specific site that we own, which is the old bowling alley site at 2200 North Federal, that we want to use for this purpose. So what I'd like to do at this point is introduce Kenneth Jones, who is the CEO of HCA Northwest Hospital, would also be in charge of this facility, to explain the differences between these various uses. And the reason for that, as Gene said, without the new definition of freestanding emergency room, we would be treated like a specialty hospital, and we're not a specialty hospital. So Mr. Jones will explain that.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Kenneth Jones, I'm CEO of HCA Florida Northwest Hospital. Address is 10211 Lone Star Place in Davie, Florida. Thank you, Dennis and team, for the opportunity to speak. This is Dr. Matt Lickerman. He'll give some discussion points on from a clinical standpoint. Background, I've been CEO of HCA Florida Northwest Hospital for 4 years. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, went to school at Florida A&M. And really excited to serve as the CEO of HCA Florida Northwest. We've been in existence since 1981. A little bit about HCA. We are the largest operator of healthcare facilities throughout the country. We have over 190 hospitals across the United States. We operate 49 facilities in Florida, 14 in the East Florida division, which is Treasure Coast down to Miami. We have 4 here in Broward, HCA Northwest, Woodmont, University, and Westside. In the state, we operate 54 freestanding emergency rooms and 9 in the East Florida division. Just a little bit about the use of this site. Freestanding emergency rooms are facilities that are technically a part of the main facility, so they're part of HCA Florida Northwest Hospital. And they treat emergent conditions, whether it be someone who's at a athletic event and they need to be seen by a physician immediately. It's open 24/7. We anticipate around 30 patients being seen per day. And to Dennis's point, the traffic count is very similar to what you see in a facility, seeing about 1 to 2 patients on average per hour. We have high-intensity imaging equipment, laboratory resources, and urgent care provides less intense services, typically staffed by a physician and or a physician assistant, typically not open 24/7, really more basic laboratory equipment and imaging equipment. And then a specialty hospital is a full-service acute care facility that admits patients to the facility. This facility would not have patients admitted overnight. If a patient needs to be admitted to a facility, they would be transported via EMS or private ambulance service to a facility. More information about our facility. We are a tax-paying entity. We provide over $16 million in taxes for the local Broward County local sales property taxes, and over $14 million in uncompensated care. As an emergency room, we follow the laws of EMTALA, which require us to treat patients regardless of their ability to pay, medical screening evaluation, and ensuring that everyone that comes into our facility has the ability to pay. We offer comprehensive services, cardiovascular, women's, pediatrics, general surgery. So we pretty much are A to Z, relationships. And we also partner with other facilities. If we don't offer a service, we partner with the local community hospitals to refer patients and to transport patients for services that we don't offer at the facility. Dr. Lickerman is our medical director. I'll have him come up for some words around the clinical activities in an emergency room. He's our medical director at HCA Florida Northwest.
Hi. Dr. Matthew Lickerman, medical director, chief of emergency medicine at HCA Florida Northwest Hospital. Basically, to reiterate what Dr. Jones was saying, a freestanding ER is a lot different than an urgent care center. It can provide services, basically any services that a emergency department affiliated with a hospital can provide, we can provide at a freestanding department as well, short of admission to a hospital. We can take care of all conditions, whether it be chest pains, injuries, lacerations, procedures, and we would be staffing with board-certified emergency physicians, which is a big distinction from typical urgent care center, which is usually either a family practice or a nurse practitioner, or even sometimes residents even can provide care at those places. So they aren't emergency medicine trained, board-certified. We receive at our current hospital, we receive transfers from urgent care centers with increasing frequency, and those patients typically are being transferred to us with conditions that would be able to be taken care of at the freestanding ER and wouldn't need a transfer to a hospital. They can be provided a service at a freestanding and then be discharged from there, which will provide a gap in that kind of service that isn't normally available at an urgent care center. So I think there's a huge benefit to closing that gap between hospitals, which, as most of the hospitals have long wait times in the emergency departments, you're providing an ability to have those patients taken care of in an emergency setting with emergency physicians taking care of them, and preventing that wait time, longer wait time, waiting room times for less severe conditions at the local hospitals. Patients that do require admission, as can happen, patients enter urgent care centers with more serious conditions than they may realize when they enter there, and those patients get transferred to the hospital. A lot of those patients that get transferred to our hospital, we still take care of and can discharge. On occasion, there'll be a patient that has to be admitted. So if there is a patient at the freestanding ER that, despite the care they provide there, requires admission, then they get transferred to the nearest hospital or hospital of choice. So that's essentially the service that can be provided at a freestanding ER as opposed to an urgent care.
Okay. Is that the end of your presentation? You're going to come back. Okay.
So, as was mentioned earlier, without the definition of freestanding emergency room, we would be categorized as a specialty hospital. And specialty hospitals are kind of what you would think of. It's a hospital that handles a certain area of medical care, like a maternity hospital, a mental hospital, a cardiac hospital. This is not that. In 2021, the legislature passed the new act that provides for freestanding emergency rooms in Florida. And the title of it was very interesting, An Act Relating to Freestanding Emergency Departments. That was the title. And as Gene mentioned, this act is largely a consumer protection act. In other words, it's making sure that if you go to a hospital, a freestanding emergency room versus an urgent care, you know the difference. We have to have special signage that explains it. We have to explain the different charges that you might incur at a freestanding emergency room, which is more like a hospital emergency room that we all know, versus an urgent care that may charge less. You have to put up specific signs. There has to be items on a website. The state agency for health care has to put items on their website to explain to people how this works. And then the hospital has to take the information from the state agency and put it on their website. So it's all about letting people know that you might pay more at one facility versus the other. And as Gene said, the legislature didn't really address anything with respect to zoning. You know, how does a local government deal with that? That's not unusual. We see new uses that come that may not be in a code, and now you have to put them in or you have to address them. Many years ago, there weren't cell phone stores because there weren't cell phones. So once we had them, we needed to address them from a zoning perspective. So this act was really largely for consumer protection to make sure you know what you were paying. So the reason we believe this new category needs to be defined is because it's not an urgent care and it's not a specialty hospital, it's something in between. Prior to 2021, there was no such thing, but now there are. And as you heard, HCA operates a number of them. Broward Health, we have some folks from Broward Health here. I know they operate some of them. I recently worked on 2 freestanding emergency rooms in Pembroke Pines, one for HCA and one for Baptist. And I know Memorial is building one also in Pembroke Pines. Now, sometimes you'll see, like the Memorial facility in Pembroke Pines that's coming to Douglas Road and Washington Street, they'll couple it with other uses because they have a very large site there. So, for example, their freestanding emergency room in Pembroke Pines for Memorial will have not only the emergency room, but it'll have imaging and surgical and a number of other things. The new Baptist facility, also going in Pembroke Pines, so it's a 4-story building. Ground floor is a freestanding emergency room, but the 3 upper floors are other medical uses. In our particular case, the site that we own is very small. It's big enough for the freestanding emergency room, not for much else. So it will probably occupy the entire property. I'll show that momentarily. And I know, again, we're not talking about a specific site, but how we've identified this and how we've addressed it, I think, helps put it in context. So, traffic, ambulance trips. First of all, I want to point out that your EMS chief is here tonight, so if you want to ask questions about ambulances, it's probably better to ask him than to ask me because he obviously knows a lot more about it than I do. But what we have been able to do is, from our experience with our other freestanding emergency rooms, we're able to look at traffic generally, and we're able to look specifically at ambulance traffic. And the reason we look at ambulance traffic is because as we've talked to people in the community, people said, are we going to hear sirens going all the time? Is this going to generate a lot more noise? We presented the data that we have. So first of all, as mentioned in your staff report, just for general traffic, there is an ITE code, an Institute of Transportation Engineers code, for freestanding emergency rooms that establishes the traffic numbers, and that is significantly less than other uses that could go on this property, or could go on B3 properties, I should say generally, because B3 properties allow a wide range of commercial and office and other uses. So currently, the bowling alley on the site is about 28,000 square feet. We don't need anything near that large. Our facility is between 10 and 11,000 square feet. So what we did, originally we had a comparison of 28,000 square foot commercial uses with their traffic as compared to ours. And Ms. Dolan, who I listened to very carefully, I've known her a long time, she said, well, don't show it that way. Show the commercial uses at the same size building you're going to build and make that your comparison. So that's what we did. And so you see that with the current zoning, with a standard retail use, it would be 591 trips. We have 271, so it's a very significant reduction. With restaurant-type uses, you're looking at over 1,100 trips, and again, our 271, so significantly less. So if you're looking at some of the criteria that deal with impacts on the community, traffic is usually the first one we look at. We have a lot less traffic than other uses that would go, that currently can go in B3 as permitted uses. And then the ambulance traffic, just a specific thing that we were asked to look at. We have two facilities in Palm Beach County, which are our closest ones. And one of them is in Palm Beach Gardens, the other one's in Boynton Beach. And you see that in Palm Beach Gardens, our experience has been 0.8 ambulance trips per day, or roughly 5 to 6 in an average week. And in Boynton Beach, even lower, 0.4 ambulance trips a day, about 2 to 3 per week. Now, what I found in talking to the fire departments in Pembroke Pines and here in Pompano Beach, and again, your EMS chief is here, so he can explain this himself, but they don't take people in an ambulance with the lights and sirens going to a freestanding emergency room. It's my understanding they have two categories of calls. I believe it's Class 1 and Class 3. I hope I'm using the right terminology. Class 1 is where they're driving like anybody else. They're not running lights, they're not running sirens, they're just driving. And when they're bringing someone to our place, if someone wants to come to our place, that's the way they're going to do it. Because if someone, it's an emergent call, I believe is the terminology they use, that's a Class 3, then they are running with lights and sirens. When they're doing that, they're taking the patient to a full-blown hospital. They're not taking them to us. But if you're at the soccer field in the city park and your kid sprains his ankle and you're not sure what's going on, they can certainly take him to our place, but they're not going to run lights and sirens while they're doing it. If you're having a heart attack and they need to run lights and sirens, they're not taking them to us. They're taking them to North Broward, Holy Cross, or wherever else the city's EMS generally takes people. But again, we can talk about that in more detail. The reason that seemed to be important is as we were talking to people in the community, there was a concern that we would have sirens going all day and night and people would be hearing it in the neighborhood, and that's not the case. So this is the support memo from the Economic Development Council. I see two of the Economic Development Council members here tonight. Of course, they both abstained because they probably knew they were going to have to vote on it while they were here, and so they shouldn't vote on it at that point. But we did make the presentation, and it was very well received. The other thing we did when we were first looking at just our property at 2200 North Federal Highway, we started to look at where were the places that you could put a specialty hospital, right? Because that's where we're categorized right now. Where were the places we could put a specialty hospital? And we just looked between the beach and I-95. We didn't go west of I-95 because that's not where we're located. We're on Federal Highway. I will tell you, west of I-95, there would probably be more locations, but they would largely be in the middle of industrial parks. And the reason for that is you have to have 3 acres and you have to be more than 500 feet away from residential. And that's very hard to do in these general commercial areas in Pompano Beach because your zoning here is similar to many other places where on your main corridors you have commercial zoning and then in your neighborhoods you have residential. And so when you draw that 500-foot line, there's very few places to go. So we identified these 10 locations. What's interesting about them is that none of them work. And I'll just explain why very quickly. So many of them, if you see on this map, purple is industrial. I know you're familiar with this from being on the P&Z board, but purple is industrial, red is commercial, and the yellow and earth tone colors are residential with different densities. So, you know, where we have our number 1 at the north end, this is in the middle of an industrial park. There's 8 different parcels, 8 different property owners. And you would have to tear down the buildings that are there, assemble all the properties to be able to put one at that location. Number 2 is similar. It's 14 parcels, the most notable of which is the Hillsborough Beach water plant. So again, not somewhere where you could actually put this use, even though it would be allowed with the 500-foot separation and the 3-acre requirement. Property number 3, 15 industrial bays, different property owners. There's a gun range there now. There's a bunch of automotive repair and sales establishments. Again, they're not going anywhere. Number 4, it's Pompano City Center, and it's only a portion of the city center it could go on, not the whole thing. You couldn't go too close to Federal Highway because, as Gene was talking about that other site, on the other side of Federal, you have residential. And the location within City Center where you could go, part of it is going to be residential, a development that you all saw here a couple of years back that's going to be under construction shortly. And the rest of it was a Lowe's store and some other things that, again, they're not going anywhere. So that site won't work. And so each of these that are on this list is a similar thing. One of them is the Taha Marine and South Florida Diving HQ that's right across from Houston's. I don't think a freestanding emergency room is going there. Another one is in a location where there's a bunch of existing uses, charter school, church, dialysis center. Parcel 8 is 50 different industrial bays with different owners. And I could go on. There's only 2 more. One of them is an affordable housing development that is a tax credit deal that has federal money associated with it. You can't tear it down. And then the last one is 6 different parcels. There's an urgent care there now and a couple of other uses, including a car dealership and a public store. So really, there is no place between I-95 and the ocean that you could put a specialty hospital, 3 acres, 500 feet away from residential. If you go west of 95, I think you'd find a similar circumstance, except in the areas that are very large industrial areas, you could probably locate them there. But it's not the right place for something like this, where you're going to get health care and you're going into the middle of an industrial park with 18-wheelers driving all over the place. Wouldn't make much sense. We have heard some people use the term that we have a healthcare desert in certain parts of Pompano Beach because of these regulations. So in the memo from staff, I think the historical perspective was very important, that these medical regulations were put into effect, I think it was mentioned in 2016. You were having a explosion of rehab places and sober homes, and so you had to do something about it. Because those facilities are covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act, you have to be careful to make sure that you're not discriminating against that use as compared to other uses that might be considered similar. As the staff memo pointed out, the state stepped in and put regulations in place that largely took care of that issue. But we still have a code that prohibits these uses because of the concern about these rehab facilities that seems to have been taken care of itself by state regulation. So you'll notice that there is a similar facility going up in Lighthouse Point that I believe Broward Health is doing. There's a similar facility going up in Deerfield that I think Holy Cross is doing. And someone asked me, well, how come you have to go through all this and they didn't have to do that there? Well, that's because in Lighthouse Point and Deerfield Beach, their code doesn't read like yours. It doesn't make these uses be 500 feet away from residential. It doesn't make you go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get a variance for those uses. They're permitted. In many cases, they're handled like medical offices are handled. When urgent care first came out, there was no provision for that in codes either, so they were generally dealt with like medical office. And then over time, cities put provisions in their code, like you have, for urgent care. So this is another new use that's come along later than urgent care, and it should be addressed. So those are the items that I wanted to show. I know that you have members of the public to speak. I would like the opportunity to come back at the end of that time frame and sum up. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them either now or then.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mealy. Does anybody want to ask questions now, or would you like to hear from the audience first? I think it makes more sense. Yeah, okay. All right. So I'm sure there's some folks who didn't just come out to see our lovely faces tonight. So if you would like to talk on this issue, come on up to the microphone right here. Sir, come on up, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Tell us your name and address and what's on your mind.
Hi, my name is Mike Weir. I live in Pompano Beach. My house is one of the ones within 500 feet of this site. It's a nice neighborhood. deep water canals, expensive homes, old people like me with really good health insurance. That's what this is really about. HCA wants to put a center there that allows them to cherry pick really good patients so they can move them out to their hospital west. What happens then is we're going to be changing the healthcare mix that goes to the existing emergency rooms in our area. The Trauma Center at North Broward, Imperial Point, the not-for-profit Holy Cross. When that profit mix changes from those facilities, because they have to take any patient that goes there, and these freestanding health cares only take patients that pay, the disbalance in revenue is going to cause the taxes to support those hospitals to go up. And beyond that, our area is well served with emergency rooms and doctors in the area. We really don't need another area in that facility. And when I bought the house many years ago, I had a reasonable expectation of what my neighborhood would be like. Hospitals use all kinds of infectious waste. They produce a lot of garbage. They have to store medical gases. They use radiologic agents in diagnosing different medical conditions. Also, medical equipment like MRIs and X-ray machines can affect TV reception within the area. So there's a lot of reasons why HCA shouldn't be involved in that. And this committee dealt with that in October 20th, 2022, under 2211000016, that I request you open up and attach to this meeting so you can refresh the reasons why this was turned down with the same facility, the same area, the same neighborhood back in 2022. Thank you. Any questions for me?
No, didn't look like it. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Michael Bell, Pompano Beach, Florida resident. Look, I think...
address for the record, please.
110 North East 27th Street. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
One thing that I would suggest that this seems like a pretty good idea. Other city has it apparently, and they're moving along with it. And I know Pompano, while we still have our old town feel, we do believe in advancing our community. The fact that it's we have an opportunity, I think it creates faster access to emergency care, enhanced community health infrastructure, convenient location for residents, high quality of medical services, and economic opportunities and employment. And, you know, look, I think there's a lot of great hospitals. I have the privilege to have worked with ACA along my path in the community. They give back to our community. They support our community, just like there's other folks who do as well. But I think we can't take away that this is a phenomenal opportunity for our residents and to have faster access. And as a resident, I too believe sirens are not always nice. But the reality of here, I didn't hear anything about there would be sirens because of the levels, right? So again, I think this could be a great project for our community and to bring more opportunities in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good evening. Matthew Garner, Chief Executive Officer, Broward Health North, 201 East Sample Road, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33064. So thank you guys for taking a moment to listen to me tonight. So I brought my team out this evening to address 3 things specifically. I'm going to touch on 2 of them and let another member of my team touch on the other. First of all, I want to establish who Broward Health is, tell you guys a little bit about Broward Health North. And then second, I have a couple things that I want you guys to consider as you consider this decision on what to do in this situation. So first off, Broward Health has been serving the greater Broward County community for the last 87 years. We're a public, not-for-profit taxpayer-assisted system. And just last year alone, we provided $500 million in uncompensated care compared to the $40 million that they spoke about. So we're home to 2 of the trauma centers within Broward County. The other one's over at Memorial, one of which is over at Broward Health North, my home facility. So we serve some of the sickest patients in the county. You know, Broward Health North itself has grown considerably since it first opened up in 1961. We're a 409-bed facility. We are the first statutory teaching hospital in the state of Florida, so we're home to about 200 residents. We're very proud of those programs. And we offer some very high acuity services. So we have a comprehensive stroke center, we're a STEMI receiving center, so the team does some really great stuff. And just to highlight some of the contributions of our emergency department specifically, so we see about 60,000 patients each year, and the team does such a good job that we consistently perform above the 90th percentile in terms of patient satisfaction, which is really tough to do in the emergency room. So getting into the things that I want you guys to consider before you make this decision. So first of all, considering keeping the need to proceed with a request like this by special exception versus the right by methodology. So specifically with the creation of the new use of the hospital-based off-campus emergency room, the new use proposes by right, meaning that they don't have to go through the exception review process, and there's little oversight in terms of the scope and the potential impact of where they may be planning a similar facility. So I just want to point out that that is a special consideration, right? Because as much as we'd like to say, you know, the specialty hospital designation doesn't apply to a concept like this, I do think that there are considerations that you have to take into account when you're considering where to stand these up, besides meeting certain minimum requirements. So the point that was made about the other freestanding emergency departments that are popping up throughout Broward County, right? I think the density of where these facilities are popping up is to be of consideration, right? Understood that this facility is being discussed for Pompano Beach specifically, but just to give you a sense of how dense these other facilities are located. So our planned facility in Lighthouse Point is about 2.8 miles away, and then Holy Cross is about 3.9 miles away, right? So that means, can I keep going? I'm almost done.
Okay.
Okay, so that means come middle of 2026, you're going to have 4 hospital-based emergency departments within a 4-mile radius, including the one that exists at North and the one at Imperial Point. So I would suggest that as you do with other industries, there be some consideration about a dispersal requirement in conjunction with other jurisdictions, right? Taking into account the density of these services, the overlap.
That's not quick. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi there, Evan Boyer, Broward Health North, 201 East Sample Road, Deerfield Beach, 33064. Thank you all for your commitment really to the community. Time is finite. I can commend your dedication. And I'm a physician, more specifically, I'm an ER physician, providing ED care in our community for over 15 years and attending at North. I'm the immediate past chief of staff at Broward Health North and the medical director for emergency medicine for the Broward Health System. I'm not an expert in zoning and planning, I don't pretend to be, but certainly have a deep understanding of emergency medicine. I certainly agree with the description that the HEA folks talked about, what a freestanding ED is. It is an emergency department. It has the capabilities to treat the sick of the sick. We treat all comers. So it's open, and it's open for business, it's open for ambulances, and ambulances are gonna come. Now, it also treats all patients. It treats those with mental illness, it treats those that are homeless. The EDs, we all have MTALO requirements. So just a couple of notes about some information that was shared on this this site by HCA. They talk about waiting times, you know, that's the pitch. So it reported that 166 minutes at Broward Health North to be treated and go home, and 131 minutes at Broward Health Imperial Point, without citing their source. But really, if you look at the lower acuity patients, what we call ES level 4s and 5s, I mean, that's what they're, want to attract, and that's being kind of cited on their website. if you look at just carve out, so we compare apples to apples, if you carve out what a level 5 is at our shop, you'll be out in 50 minutes. If you combine 4s and 5s, it's 103 minutes compared to the proposed 102 minutes on the HCA site that they have there. So just a couple of things about the site. They talk about, you know, treating children with fevers, sports injuries, allergic reactions. You can go to the urgent care right up the street that's already existed there. Additionally, they talk about maternity and neonatal care, and really that's not the wheelhouse of emergency departments, and I work in one, and I'll be honest with you. Talk about ambulance traffic, it's inevitable. And will the facility attract homeless individuals? It was cited on their site that the homeless outreach site said, well, it won't be a receiving facility for Baker Acts and homeless, but of course it is. They're our most vulnerable patient population, and of course we're to care for them in an emergency department. Just a couple of other things. There was a myth on there saying that there's a hospital nearby. That's true. There's 2 acute care hospitals, BHIP, and there's Broward Health North. By the time this goes live, there'll be a freestanding 2.8 miles up and like 3 miles south of there. So plenty of places to go. And as far as endorsements go, just recently the Greater Pompano Beach Chamber rescinded their endorsement off of the site. And I'll just last in my last 6 questions, the 6 seconds. The most relevant question that they had is, they cited in an emergency, time is every minute counts. So I don't disagree. But if you go there and you got to be transported to the hospital, you got to go 20 minutes down the road, west, 20 minutes, to a hospital rated C for safety, when you have 2 other hospitals rated higher for safety within 4 miles. So, I mean, listen, in conclusion, I'm not a zoning person. I'm just telling you, if you live there, you walk out the door, you have all these options around you. You build this in the middle of your city, there's going to be traffic, there's going to be ambulances, but I think there's other options. So just something for you all to consider. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think we're next speaker.
Hello, everyone. My name is Denise Gasparino. I am a resident of actually Oakham Park on 107 Royal Park Drive, Oakham Park, Florida. But I'm not here for me. I'm here for my in-laws. My in-laws are residents of Pompano Beach, and I do worry about them as they are getting older. Their address is 3850 Oaks Clubhouse Drive in Pompano Beach, Florida. Like many of our community, a lot of our elders have medical issues, and they can flare up any condition at any given time. When you get the phone call as a family member, you get nervous, you get scared in the middle of the night, you don't know what's going to happen to your family members and loved ones. Your heart starts pounding. We want to be able to get convenience. We want to be able to have an option other than an ER that may not be close by. So that gives you that opportunity to get to somewhere a little quicker, perhaps without having the need of waiting. Of course, you get nervous, you're driving, a freestanding emergency room could be the answer. I think it could be really helpful to have it closer to home, give options. It's not just about convenience, but just having that safe place nearby where you don't have to think. It means getting help faster, more convenient, and maybe being able to avoid a tragedy that perhaps might happen. Families like mine deserve the attention we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yeah,
may I ask where Oaks Drive is in Pompano Beach?
it's in Palm Air.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. But when I found out about this, I made sure.
Sir, can you, your name and address for the record?
Corey Thompson, 2116 Northwest 4th Street, Pompano Beach, Florida, 33069. I'm a probably 20th generation Pompano resident. And we have a lot of geriatric people in our community. So we need conveniency, because going to Semper Road, considering traffic, or either going down Andrews to get to Broward General, you may not just make it. I mean, we're gonna have traffic no matter what. This is the Golden State, Florida. Everybody wants to come here. So when we talk about traffic, it's gonna happen no matter what. Yeah, we don't like traffic. I don't like it either when I'm going to work, but it's gonna happen. But how could we get someone somewhere quick enough where in life-saving events? We got to think about the choices that we make, choices that you all gonna be able to make today. I think this is something that needs to be looked at and needs to be took to the commission so it can be analyzed again and a game plan be made. Because my mom, unfortunately, is a diabetic. My uncle is 96 years old. And, you know, time comes, things happen. You know, ailments come, diabetes and high blood pressure and different things. But what we do, we keep living. So if we can have enough locations around where somebody can just help them in time. Because trying to make it to Sample Road, great hospital, Broward General, great asset to the community, but what if you don't make it there in time? Paramedics can do only just as much as they can with what they have at hand. So just think about John Knox, Palmer, something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Weekly. I live at 2680 Northeast 23rd Street, Pompano Beach. I'm pretty much right behind the bowling alley. As a concerned community member, I strongly oppose HCA's proposed zoning changes. These amendments would negatively impact our neighborhood and prioritize private interests over public good. Here are the main concerns. Number one, weakening the existing rules for the 24-hour urgent care category. They want to remove the 500-foot buffer between urgent care centers and homes, added language about traffic flow, and allowing overnight treatment. This buffer protects residents from nighttime noise, traffic, bright lights. It replaces it with minimum landscape, which won't stop the sirens or the headlights disturbing nearby homes, providing overnight treatment where currently it's prohibited. Number two, allowing the 24/7 off-campus emergency room in inappropriate areas. Even with a buffer, these facilities would bring nonstop emergency traffic, pedestrians, noise, and lights close to homes and small businesses all night long. Traffic patterns are still a concern with this tight residential area. Quiet neighborhoods aren't designed for this kind of high-intensity use. These uses belong in areas built for constant activity, not squeezed in near residential zones. And I just want to note that the urgent care category and the freestanding ER in the text amendment seems to be exactly the same to me, with the proposed changes. Okay, number three, this text amendment is cutting out the public. Under the new rules, these facilities could be approved without notifying neighbors or holding public hearings. That means no input, no transparency, and no checks and balances. Responsible development includes the voice of the community. This shuts them out. Tailored to one project, though written as city change, it's clear that these amendments are meant to benefit HCA at 2200 North Federal Highway. They appear to be setting up the text amendment to take hold under either the urgent care or the 24-hour facility or the freestanding ER. A code proposal was denied in 22 or 23 for many of these same reasons. Zoning laws shouldn't be rewritten to benefit one developer. This sets a bad precedent. My final thought, these amendments reduce neighborhood protection, silence residents, and fast-tracks development that doesn't belong near homes. I urge the city leaders to reject the proposal and stand for fair, community-focused planning. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Wayne Vereen, 2420 Northwest 7th Street, Pompano Beach, Florida. I just want to say good evening, and I'll give honor to this board, and I want to thank all the doctors and the nurses in the hospital for all the good work that you're doing. But HCA has came here tonight, and they gave us, they're giving us an opportunity for Pompano. And this board have a choice to make tonight. And what I want to say, I like on that display what he showed. They're going to be targeting people with issues that they can help right here. And this board have the opportunity to change that and make it happen. Pompano is growing. Roads are getting fixed up out there. There's a lot of things that's gonna be coming to Pompano, but we have an opportunity tonight to choose HCA to help us in this community. What I like about what he said, they're gonna target people that have issues that they can deal with right here in our community. They ain't got to go that far. They can get that help that they need right then. And also that gap where they can take up some of the load from what the other hospitals are dealing with. And see, if we allow that to come to our city, that's a plus for us. Now, this board have a chance to make that decision. I'm for it. I'm not against it. You know, I know we can look at all the numbers. It's all about numbers. But when we think about it, it's about helping somebody. And that's what they're here to do. They came here to our city. They're giving us an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ramon Feliciano. I currently reside in Coconut Creek, 6141 Northwest 44th Terrace, but I also own property in Pompano Beach, 101 Bryony Ave, Unit 2219. So I'm just speaking to you in this capacity as a resident of Broward. Been here since '89. I grew up in Coral Springs, and I've been very familiar with Northwest and HCA, even though I was closer to a different facility in Coral Springs. I think ultimately, as a resident, a large family down here, HCA has an established name. So I think besides the zoning and all the other issues people are bringing up, just as someone that has a lot of family out east and been in this community for so long, HCA has its role in the community. I know, for example, growing up in Coral Springs, I still went past a prominent facility out in Coral Springs Medical, to Northwest. My family all goes to HCA. And I think it just brings more of an opportunity for folks out east that will stay with an HCA facility or whatever they like. People tend to stay loyal to their hospitals. My parents are very stubborn. They're old in their ways. You know, they love different health chains. They love HCA. So they do live out east in the Pompano area, and it would just make me feel a lot better knowing that they have the ability to go to an HCA. Luckily, they never had any major issues, but when they do have to go to the urgent cares, they have to go all the way to Margate, to Northwest, to be seen, just because that's where they prefer. That's where their preferred doctors are. That's where they're comfortable with. That's what they know what they're going to get. I know every facility has, and I understand what Broward was saying, there's some other folks in the vicinity, and that does make sense, but I don't see that as a bad thing, being that there's so many loyal people to HCA, and they are coming to Pompano, and it's only going to help our city, especially as it grows. And I really don't see a reason why it would be a bad thing. I could only see it as a good thing, especially with the capability that this facility will have for the community. It will certainly be a bigger draw to higher health care. And also, maybe it's just my opinion, but I don't see Holy Cross here having any issue with it. So it's a good thing, in other words. I could understand if they were out here and everyone was anti. I just think it brings a different dynamic and a well-needed dynamic to the city. So just as a Broward resident for 30-plus years, I would strongly appreciate your consideration. I think HCA should be in Pompano. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
How you doing? My name's Alex Boardman. I live at 2600 Northeast 19th Street. I'm here to speak in support of having the standalone ER. I personally live about 3 blocks south and 4 blocks east of where this would be. That bowling alley's been vacant for years, and it is on a commercial corridor. I don't see any issue with having a little bit more medical care in the area, even though I personally prefer Broward General. I work as a firefighter. We transport people to Broward General and Imperial Point all the time. Love those hospitals, love the people there. But I do see one thing I do want to point out to my neighbors. You know, I, on occasion, will run errands on a bicycle. I'll just go ride, I'll go Publix, wherever I need to go within our neighborhood. And the thing that has been the best for making our neighborhood safer is having that Chick-fil-A getting renovated right now. There's so much less traffic, so much less noise, so much less garbage in the area. So please consider that. Take that into consideration. Having healthcare and having these other freestanding ERs in the area actually may reduce the traffic that goes to this HCA place. So I'm in the area. I know that these ERs are going to have some transports come to them. I would assume, and maybe the Pompano Beach chief here can speak to it, but I would assume that most of these transports will be code 1 to the area. I don't know if you guys have any answers on that, but that is a question. Is that something that could be answered?
We probably will, yeah. I had it on my list of things to ask.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Ephraim Silva. I reside at 1500 Northwest 115th Terrace in Plantation. But my place of business is the Chick-fil-A. I'm sorry, we're so... At 2250.
You should have spoke earlier, apparently.
I should have beat him, I know. At 2250 North Federal Highway in Pompano Beach, Florida.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm a business owner in the city of Pompano Beach, and I've been a business owner here since 2016, and I've employed hundreds of Pompano Beach residents in that time. Currently, we have a staff of 76, of which the vast majority are Pompano Beach residents, and I view my job, it's good to see you, Bobby, by the way. Sorry for firing you. Just kidding. That was a joke. We didn't fire him. He was a great team leader for us. I view my job as creating a place of work that helps change the lives of my employees. And I believe that allowing HCA to be there will add to that value proposition, not only for my employees, but for residents of the city of Pompano Beach. I've had the pleasure also of meeting with the leadership of HCA, and I believe that I'm a fairly good judge of character. It's what I do. I base my living off of that. And their leadership and care that goes into it, into their business and into the way they care for their people, not only their employees, but also their patients, is one that I believe would benefit our city greatly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, good evening. My name is Patricia Dale. My address is 15 Southeast 19th Avenue. I'm a registered nurse. I do not work for North Broward or Holy Cross. I have worked for HCA, for just the regular civilians that are not in the medical field. HCA facility is a for-profit organization. You have Broward Health, it's not for profit. You have Trinity Health, Holy Cross is not for profit. They're actually Christian-based. I do work for Baptist, and I am a resident of Pompano. And for the community, when it comes to geriatric care, in the freestanding ER, they're limited to what they can do. So at the end of the day, they get transferred to the nearest facility. I know we have the EMS captain here, or the chief, and he knows that when it comes to an emergency, they will be transferring you to the nearest facility. Imperial Point's a great hospital. Broward Health North is a great hospital, so is Holy Cross. Where do you, in the freestanding ED, where are you going to transport the geriatric community? To Northwest Hospital? Life is more important than transporting the patient to a Northwest or a HCA facility. You will be transported to the nearest facility if it's life over matter. So I do oppose to HCA. Me personally, as just a civilian, I prefer to go to a nonprofit organization. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, I think that's it. Mr. Mealy, did you have some closing?
I do, thank you. Again, Dennis Mealy, 200 East Broward Boulevard, on behalf of the applicant. So just a few comments on some of what we heard. So first of all, just because HCA is as a for-profit company, when we have an emergency room, we cannot turn anyone away. If they don't have insurance, we still treat them. So some suggestion that I think was made earlier that we would turn them away is not true. Under Florida law, we can't turn them away. Mr. Jones commented that we have $40 million in unpaid bills because we can't turn people away. We have to treat them. So that comment that was made was not accurate. This item has never appeared before the Planning and Zoning Board. I think you know that. It went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and Ms. Dolan talked about the fact that the special exception was approved, but the variance was denied because we needed 3 acres. We don't have 3 acres, and the 500-foot rule. The comments from Broward Health. So a couple of years ago, I was at a City of Sunrise Commission meeting, and the City of Sunrise had a piece of property that they had a contract to sell to Baptist. And so both Broward Health and Memorial came to the Sunrise City Commission meeting and said, don't sell the property to Baptist, sell it to us, and we'll build something. And the City of Sunrise said to them, you've owned property in Sunrise for 25 years and you've never done anything. We're not going to turn Baptist away. If you want to build a facility in Sunrise, we would welcome you, but we're not going to turn someone else away. And so Broward Health did eventually. In fact, they're under construction now on Oakland Park Boulevard, just west of Pine Island, where they are building a facility. By the way, Baptist is building theirs as well. And the people of Sunrise are happy because they're going to have choices of medical care for both Baptist and Broward Health. The Broward Health folks said that we should be a special exception. They're not a special exception in Lighthouse Point, permitted as of right. Holy Cross is not a special exception in Deerfield Beach. They're permitted as of right. But for some reason, we should go through a process that they didn't have to go through. The entire conversation is anti-competitive. This is the same thing we saw in Sunrise. It's the same thing that I saw in Pembroke Pines. I did both a freestanding emergency room for Baptist and also for HCA. And Memorial sued the city of Pembroke Pines to try to stop both projects. Eventually the lawsuits were settled and the projects are going to be built. There was a suggestion that the Chamber of Commerce rescinded their endorsement. That's not true. What happened is Broward Health called the Chamber and said, you said something good about HCA, and HCA is using it on their website, and we want HCA to take it off their website. So we did. But we don't ask anybody to take Broward Health's endorsements. We think they're fine. We think they're great. We think competition is the American way. So they talk about how we are for profit. We pay taxes. They collect taxes. The ambulance traffic, the only thing I would ask, the chief's been sitting here all night. When you get to the questions and answers, ask him. He's the expert. He'll tell you what kind of runs they make, when they use lights and sirens and when they don't. And they don't use them when they come to us. And I believe he will tell you that. There's also been a suggestion that if someone needs to be transported to the hospital, that they're only going to Northwest in Margate. That's not true. The person can go to whatever hospital they want. If they say, I've come to your freestanding emergency room, but it looks like you need more care, wherever they want to go, that's where they will be taken. If they want to go to Broward General, they want to go to North Broward, they want to go to Holy Cross, they want to go to Imperial Point, or they want to come to us. Wherever they want to go, that's where they go. And we've made that clear at every meeting. The other thing I will just point to is the criteria. Ms. Dolan referred to this. The criteria for code amendments starts on page 3 of your staff report and goes on to page 4. And it shows from the staff's point of view, not just ours. We have our own letter that's in your backup, but that's us, not being objective. We're representing our client. But I encourage you to look at the staff report starting on page 3 and going on to page 4 that shows the criteria that have to be met for a code amendment have been met, all of them. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We'll be here if you need us for anything else. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to open it up to, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Saunders. I'm going to open it up to Mr. Saunders because he's our attorney.
I similarly want to remind the board of the item before you. While you've heard lots of comments related to HCA and Broward Health and all of the brand names, this is a code amendment. and although made by the applicant, you are looking at this solely as a code amendment. And the particular topic is blended to a certain degree because there are amendments that have been proposed by the applicant having to do with the off-campus emergency room. And then there are additional sort of ancillary changes that sort of happen as a result of that same application. So when you are looking at this, I would agree with Mr. Mealy that you are looking solely at your criteria as it relates to a code amendment, to the topics that that code amendment discusses. The ramifications of that, I understand, would involve any off-campus emergency room. So you want to take that into consideration, understanding all the comments that have been made, not to take any of that away, but look back at your criteria, the questions and the inquiry that you're making deal with that criteria and help you to arrive at the recommendation. Because remember, no matter what happens here, it will go before the City Commission for its consideration and approval or denial.
Okay. Okay. Mrs. Swirly, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to also make a note. I have seen, I don't know if I need to put it on the record that I've seen this presentation as well.
Sure.
So I just wanted to put that
Just for disclosure purposes, there's no conflict necessarily.
Mr. Fisher?
I know it was in the presentation originally, but I have seen the presentation previously at EDC as well. And we
Okay.
both abstained, by the way, which was mentioned in the presentation.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I need to
Mrs.
put on the record
Coleman.
that I have had a conversation about this project with Mr. Mealy, and that nothing said in that conversation. I gave him no commitments on how I would vote this evening and told him that my mind would be made up on the testimony that I saw this evening. And having said that, I want us to echo what you said, to get back to not a particular applicant here, but the code in general, and see if we can focus on the code. Just because what's contained in the staff report meets criteria, it doesn't mean that what we might do here tonight in looking at this code has to be kept in the way the code is written by staff. In other words, we could make amendments in it, and that would meet criteria as well.
Yes. Okay. Anybody else have, before we actually get into the meat of what we're going to ask, anybody else have anything besides me? I likewise have talked to Mr. Mealy as well about this. And like Mrs. Coleman, I will evaluate what the criteria are and tonight, based on what information has been given to us prior to our recommendation. And with that, maybe we can get into some of the details of what it is that we're actually, Mr. Saunders remind us what we're actually trying to do on this particular issue. So with that, does anybody have any questions that they want to start asking around?
I have a question of staff.
Yes, Mrs. Coleman, you can go first.
Ms. Dolan, do you know if any of the urgent care centers in town, including the one that's in Lighthouse Point on our border, are 24-hour facilities?
I believe they all are 24-hour facilities.
No. No.
What,
I don't think that
wait a
any
minute,
of them
you
are.
ask a different
The
question.
Holy Cross one is the one that they just put it on City Center, I know.
It is open 24? That's the only one I'm not familiar with.
And MD Now is open 24 hours. That's the one in Lighthouse Point.
I don't believe it is.
Unless it's some kind of special MD Now, that's not. Most MD Nows are open 24 hours.
Well, I'm kind of a frequent flyer there, and I don't think it's open 24 hours. I'll have to check again. I know that for many years it was not. Because many of the urgent care centers are not 24-hour facilities. They're like a doctor's office, and they've got hours. They might be expanded hours, but, you know, they are hours.
They don't have to be. They can be according to this code.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, hold on a second. hold on a second. There has to be evidence. You have to come speak at the microphone if you want. We're not going to have shout.
Well, that's okay.
I don't know if they're 24
That's
hours.
okay.
They can be.
Okay.
They can be. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I have a series of questions. If there's nobody, Mr. Fisher, you're going to go? Go ahead.
Probably directed towards the HCA people. Just a quick question, I guess, educational reasons. What is the highest level of service provided at this type of facility? Is there an OR? What's the highest level of service provided?
I'm going to get somebody who knows the answer.
Thank you.
So typically the highest level of care provided is what can be provided within the emergency room itself. So anything outside of the emergency room, whether it be operation services, admission to the hospital, cath lab suites, things that are directed outside of the emergency department won't be provided there.
Mr. Dally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff. So other examples were discussed earlier where there were these off-campus emergency rooms that had attachments to it, whether it was 3 floors above it or, surgical suites next to it. Would the current code, the way it's going to be written now, include those additional usages, or would they need special exceptions for those additional usages if in case something comes up down the line where another particular entity wants to move in someplace that has more space?
This code is just to create the new use off-campus emergency room. It doesn't talk anything about ancillary uses or other uses. They would be considered separate uses under this current way this is written.
So they would need a special exception, or would it have to go into a different?
It would depend on the use. Most of these medical uses are special exception. All the specialty medical uses are special exception. So say you had a strip shopping center and the one bay was an off-campus emergency room, and one bay was an MD Now, and one bay was a ambulatory surgical center. The ambulatory surgical center and the MD Now would be or the MD Now would be a permitted use. The healthcare emergency room would be a permitted use, and the ASC would be a special exception.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fisher, go ahead.
One last question. I believe this is staff, and I think it's already answered, but I just want to put it on the record again. So if this does pass, or our recommendation passes the City Commission, this will provide ability for any flag, I'm going to use flags as an example, any flag to be able to put one of these facilities throughout the city of Pompano Beach. Is that correct?
Right, yes.
Just want to make sure.
Okay. Anybody else? I have a handful of questions for various people, I guess. My first question, Mrs. Dolan, are all, when these would come, would all of these emergency facilities, would they be a major site plan, or is that based on size, or what would happen?
It's based on if they build a building. So if they build a building that's over a certain size, it would be a major site plan. If they move into an existing building, there wouldn't be a site plan at all. It would just be a BTR.
Okay. Okay. So if they built a building of any size, or is there or?
I think the threshold is what, 5,000 square feet max? Yeah.
Okay. So it'd have to be smaller. It would be a very small building that would fall into the minor site plan category.
Yes.
Type of
That's
thing.
true of any use. No,
With the
it's
use.
not use specific. What gets to
Oh, okay. So it's not use. It has to do with the size of the facilities and whether it comes to us, excuse me, through the major site plan process. Okay. So there was well, I feel compelled to get our EMT guy up here because the poor guy sat here, and I talked to Pete McGinnis earlier today, and he said, this guy's coming, and so he knows more about it than I do. So, sir, so there was a lot of discussion, and no offense to the other folks that said this, but explain to us from a Pompano EMT side, if you were go into a facility particularly like this versus, say, whatever, Imperial's emergency room or Holy Cross's, wherever you're going, explain to us this different levels of when the siren goes on and doesn't go on, type of thing.
Good evening, Board. Matt Witten, EMS Chief, Pompano Beach Fire Rescue, 120 Southwest 3rd Street. So as a general rule, we will not be transporting patients to freestanding emergency room. Our medical director, Dr. Paley, didn't want to say never, so he has allowed in our protocols, which our paramedics operate under, that with patient request, if it's a low acuity patient, we would be able to transfer them there. When I say low acuity patient, there was discussion about a code 1 versus code 3 patient. So a code 3 patient means we're using lights and sirens, means there's a time sensitivity, stroke, trauma alert, something of that nature, we wouldn't consider going to this facility. Code 1 is no lights and sirens, meaning, in our opinion, it's not a time-sensitive patient. Transporting code 3 is very dangerous for us and the residents, so we try to avoid it whenever we can. But as a general rule, we will still go to an emergency room that admits and not go to a freestanding.
And so I know you guys have just tons of calls. And so like in a typical day of calls that have to do with EMS, do you have like a ratio of how many times you turn the siren on versus how many times you just like go pat Mrs. Jones on the back and say you're going to be better?
A lot of I couldn't definitively say because a lot of it's a discretion of the paramedic.
Sure.
But what I can tell you is we highly discourage them going lights and sirens if, in their opinion, it's not a time-sensitive patient.
Okay.
So I couldn't honestly tell you percentage right now.
But
I'd say
okay.
it's less than
So basically, without saying 100%, it's very unlikely that you guys would be taking somebody with lights and sirens to this type of facility.
Would not be.
Yeah, that you're okay. Okay, that's sure. Go ahead, Mr. Dallin.
Thank you. You said just a little bit ago that the policy is discouraging to go to facilities like this, and you would almost always go to an emergency room in a full hospital?
Correct. There's actually discussion at the county level. There are some medical directors that have come out and said we will not transport to a freestanding. Our medical director has not gone that far, and he wants to leave it as an option if the patient requests with a low acuity.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that fully clarified.
Okay. I'm not sure who to ask this question to. I guess it's probably Mrs. Dolan. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, sir. We had one other question for you, and it wasn't me, so I'm sorry.
Sorry, before you walk away, you mentioned, you probably, I don't know if you know this answer, but probably if you're taking someone transporting from this facility to the hospital, then you're
Yeah, I think that's probably a more likely scenario. Say a gunshot wound walked into that facility, then we would be called to transport them to Broward North. That is, I don't know how often that'll happen, but I would see us being there more likely for that.
Okay. All right. A while back, Mrs. Coleman brought up the issue about, and I'm assuming this is for you, not for Mr. Mealy, but about the vehicle access and how they get into the facility. Now, I think if I understood correctly, it's like if they have 30 patients a day, one of them comes in an ambulance or something, or a half of one, however you divide the person up physically, that half of them goes today and half tomorrow, but whatever, it's a math problem. The point is that if you're going into this facility and there are very few, for lack of a better word, ambulance times when they come in here, what is our restriction, or do we have a restriction about where the ambulance enters? or would we have a restriction? I know that like certain times in certain places, we've done things like, I'll give you a gross example. Out at the live resort area thing, when we did the warehouse facilities, we made it so that only tractor trailers could get in from the east, and they could only leave to the east as well, to keep them out of Powerline Road. There's no restriction of that type on a facility like this, or?
So you're talking about a site-specific thing, and this is just a general set of standards, but what the words say, vehicular access and circulation systems and exterior signage shall be designed to provide safe and separate emergency vehicle access to the facility with minimal conflicts with other vehicular or pedestrian traffic in the area.
Okay.
That's all the code says
I
in
got
that
you.
regard.
Okay, so it basically says that there's going to be an emergency entrance of some type that's separated from the rest of the traffic.
And I think Mr. Mealy actually has a rendering of his site that shows the emergency vehicle.
Okay. Yeah, wherever, yeah. Uh-oh. You'll come back to that one, huh? Well, let me ask you a question. Am I mathematically right? It sounds like there's like theoretically 30 patients a day, but only like 1/2 of one or whatever, 0.8 of one and 0.4 in another place or something. So you're going to have sounds like 1 in 60 patients are going to come.
That's correct, and what the chief also said is correct. What we have seen when an ambulance is involved is when the person needs to leave our place and go to the regular hospital. That's generally when you see an ambulance. Somebody came and they really shouldn't have come. They should have gone to Howard North or the other full hospitals.
Gotcha.
That's generally when we see a transport.
Okay.
This is the site plan that Ms. Dolan was talking about. So our main entrance is on Federal Highway. We don't necessarily even need all these other entrances. This was just a preliminary drawing. Similar to what you do at a school, where you have the bus traffic be separate from the car traffic,
Mm-hmm.
the same thing you do in a situation like this. You have the ambulance traffic be separate from the regular traffic. And because our ambulance loading is so minor, we can probably put it anywhere we want that the city is comfortable with. And that's why I said earlier, if you want to tighten up the language about access and where you access from and where you don't access from, we're fine with that.
Okay. So the way that this is drawn looks like they would come in off of 22nd Street. So like they would drop off of Federal Highway or someplace and go into 22nd, go in that southwest entrance and then drop underneath the emergency room.
Ricochet, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, that can be revised because this is just a plan we drew. If this code amendment passes, we're going to have to develop a site plan that meets the code.
Right. Okay. Okay. I don't think I had any other questions. Okay. Did you have, Mrs. Coleman?
I don't have any questions. I want to make sure that we have time for discussion.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we've finished audience to be heard. If there are no other questions of staff or the applicant, then I'll bring it back to the board to have this board discussion. So is that what you're? Okay. You would like to go first, Mrs. Coleman?
Sure. I just want to reinforce again here that I think HCA is a wonderful organization, and I have nothing against HCA building a freestanding emergency room in Pompano Beach. I would kind of question the need for it with everything else coming in, but that's a business decision your corporation makes. What I'm concerned with and what I see my duty here is making sure that our codes are written correctly and protect the areas of the city we want to protect. So having said that, there's a couple of things I'd like for us to talk about here, Mr. Chairman. If
Sure.
one of them is primary entrances, and secondary means of access should direct traffic away from the residential neighborhoods to the maximum extent practical, I'd like to end it after should direct traffic away from residential neighborhoods. I just, practical is a subjective term, and I'd like to take the subjective nature of that out.
Okay.
Secondly, this deals with a lot more than just freestanding emergency rooms. We need to recognize those in our code because they're now an evolving structure in healthcare. But I still don't believe that 24-hour centers and 24-hour medical facilities of any kind, either the urgent cares or the freestanding emergency rooms, should be within 500 feet of residential. That is my whole problem with this text amendment. And I think that's something that, at its core, we're going to have to deal with here. I know I cannot, I have great trouble supporting this amendment if it is allowing those within 500 feet. The other changes in here, besides the where they put the traffic, I don't have a problem with. But the core issue here is allowing these facilities within 500 feet of residential. And so I'd like to listen to what everybody else on this board has to say about that.
Okay. Mr. Dowley, you want to go next?
Mr. Chair, I completely agree with Ms. Coleman on the 500 feet issue. I see your point. We do have a duty to the community in that sense.
Okay. This is
I'll go on record
Orly.
to say I
Go ahead.
absolutely agree with you as well. I think, that 500 feet needs to be recognized, and that's a residential neighborhood, and if I lived within 500 feet of a hospital or a 24-hour facility, that would be concerning.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would not be happy if I lived 500 feet from a hospital for all of the reasons that were mentioned. 500 feet, there's a reason they came up with that code of 500 feet, and I think we need to stick to it because it's the right thing to do, in my opinion.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Fisher?
I tend to agree as well. If we possibly can, and I don't know if they're probably looking at staff at this point for that, make this a special exception as it already is one currently with the code. Is that correct?
I don't know the answer.
I believe the current location's already received the 500.
This use doesn't exist in our code right
Okay.
now.
But the 500-foot rule has been given.
The specialty medical uses all had that 500-foot away from residential restriction.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The presentation we saw here, one of the other key issues was the 3 acres. And these facilities don't need 3 acres, and I can certainly see our code recognizing them in this kind of change, not needing the 3 acres. I don't know if that opens up additional sites in the city. I know that the petitioner here has one particular site in mind, but again, I'm looking at this as a code amendment for our code, not an application by a particular user. So if we want to go forward with the code, with changes, I suppose we need to hear from staff on whether they prefer us to do that or not.
Well, our recommendation can be amended. We can amend what staff brought. I mean,
And the city commission can amend it
again.
again.
Yeah.
Right.
And they have before.
Yes, they have.
We've sent them stuff and they yeah, thank you very much.
So if we want to go forward with that, I would make a suggestion that we amend the maximum extent practical on the traffic issue out and put the 500 feet back in.
I would agree.
Well, I don't know if that was, I don't believe that was a motion, but
That
maybe
wasn't
it
a
was.
motion
So
yet.
I-
Okay. No, I mean, I think we've heard from everybody except me and Dave, maybe, I don't know.
Well,
Would this be a situation where staff would take our thoughts back and try to rewrite it and bring it back to us?
no, this is simple enough, we can
Okay.
amend it right here.
Okay, cool.
If that's what this board chooses to do.
Sure.
If that's what the board chooses to do.
Well, and yeah, because it's only a recommendation anyway, so if whatever our changes are to what the staff report is, they can change it back, or they can make it whatever they want to make it, because they're a commission, so, you know. So, at this point, is there any other issues that people want to talk about other than what the ones that have been brought up, the 500 feet and the 3 acres discussion and I forgot what the other one was.
The traffic.
The traffic, verbiage, okay. So, anything else that anybody wants to talk about? And if
Mr.
not,
Chair.
what?
Prior to the motion, I just want to make sure the board want to make sure I understand and staff understands what the board is suggesting, because that some of the things that you have mentioned or that have relevance impact not only the off-campus emergency department or room, it also impacts the urgent care facility, the 24 hours. The language that was added to the urgent care facility 24 hours, if you look at your draft, 24 hours was stricken. I've heard no comment about that, so that will remain. But in that same, under the standards, the reference to the facility shall be at least 500 feet from a single-family or two-family zoning district. That references the 500 feet that you're talking about. So I want to make sure, are you only referring to the
No.
off-campus?
I'm referring to anything that is going to be open a medical facility that's going to be open 24 hours a day. So we would be putting the separation from residential uses back in for the urgent care centers, because they can be open for 24 hours.
Wait a minute, they can be open for 24 hours today?
Yes.
And you're suggesting that we take that out?
No, and today, they have to be separated from residential uses by 500 feet. I'm suggesting we leave that in.
Leave which in, or both?
All right, I'm talking
Both.
about urgent care facilities. I'm talking about both of them being required to be 500 feet from a residential or a two-family zoning district.
Okay.
Because they're 24-hour healthcare facilities.
Oh, okay.
I'm not singling one out from the other.
Okay.
So our amendments would need to be,
So then you wouldn't have to amend the part about the 500. Well, you'd have to amend this.
We'd have to
part
amend
with
this to take it back to the original.
Because it would take it back to the 500 that it already exists in
Right.
the other.
Right.
Okay.
And
Does that sound right, Mr. Song?
But you've now sort of scratched at the surface. One of the issues has been demonstrated between you and Ms. Dolan is that there are some urgent care centers that are not 24 hours. So,
Excuse me. So an urgent care center can be 24 hours. So she's just saying if a use can be 24 hours, she wants the 500-foot separation. I totally get that.
but
So
I'm asking the
don't-
question, if you let me finish. I appreciate it. So the question I'm asking you has to do with urgent care centers that are not 24 hours, because we don't make a distinction here.
Nope.
Okay, so those particular entities would also be required to have the 500 feet.
Yes, because they could at any time change their hours to 24 hours.
You understand the distinction I've just made?
I do understand the distinction, but that's a business decision that an urgent care center makes.
So even if they choose not to be 24 hours, you're still going to require the 500 feet.
Because they can change their hours at any time.
That's all I'm trying to make.
But their BTR might restrict that. No?
They can always request a variance too, if they weren't going to be 24
Trying
hours.
to be consistent here.
Okay.
By looking at 24-hour medical facilities.
Okay.
And I just want to make one distinction. This is a hybrid kind of code amendment where we have a applicant submitted code change for the hospital emergency room, and then tweaks that staff made to make that whole section internally consistent. So what we'll do with the commission is we can make the changes you're requesting to the staff-initiated part, and then explain to commission that this P&Z board recommended this 24-hour, any 24-hour medical facility have the 500-foot separation, but we won't change the applicant's actual submittal. That's their submittal. They have a right to represent it as is, and we can tell them that the Planning and Zoning Board made that recommendation.
So we would need to vote,
No.
no, we don't need to do anything then. We don't need an amendment to it. You would just tell them that we made this recommendation.
That's exactly right. And that'll be written in your recommendation memo, what your recommendation
Yeah, why it was, in theory, I guess, turned down. It is based on if it stayed the same.
Right,
Okay.
because the other changes in here are fine.
Okay. Okay. So with that, does anybody have any other discussion, or is the chair ready for, the chair is ready for a motion, let's put it that way. But is there any other discussion? Seeing none, then the chair will entertain a motion. And I think you probably need to do it, Mrs. Coleman, since
Okay.
you were the one who.
Okay. I will be glad to do that. Just as soon as I can figure out how I'm supposed to vote to get what I want. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that, considering that the application NL 692 Healthcare Use Code Text Amendment, creating a hospital-based off-campus emergency room use, as with changes as suggested by this board, be forwarded to the City Commission for their consideration. Meeting out, because it has met the review standards for code amendments.
Here's my confusion when staff says that they're going to send this up to the commission exactly as the applicant has recommended, but you are changing that. How are you then?
Well, that was my whole, if I can't amend it, let me withdraw my amendment from.
Well, it sounds like you
I
have
can't
to-
support it.
No.
So,
It sounds
And
like-
I thought that's where staff was going, that you need to, the board, if the board should decide that the criteria has not been met, but we put in the affirmative,
okay.
then you'd have to vote against it so that it's understood that it has not met those particular standards based upon the comments that you have made. And staff is going to recognize that in the memorandum that they prepared to go to the board. It will show that it was denied and why, those conditions being asked. Because the applicant's not going to accept those conditions that you
Right.
proposed.
He's going to go to the commission and say, I don't support these changes. Right, I get that.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mrs.
Why can't you just say what you want changed?
I did, and was told I couldn't change your wording.
What I would suggest, you want to tell the commission what you think about this, right?
Right.
So it sounds like you want to change a couple of things. I'm not happy with what you're changing. I want
know
to
that.
understand that.
I'm so
But
sorry,
I
but
don't
I
understand
know.
why you can't just say, we're okay with A, B, and C, but we want to change E, F, and G.
Okay.
But we're voting for a code, right? I mean,
If I can't amend this document, I don't know how to do that.
This board has one of two ways to vote for this.
I know.
Either vote up or you vote it down. You can state your reasons for voting it down and the recommended changes or conditions, whatever you want to do to that, but that is either a vote up or a vote down.
Okay.
You have to do it in the affirmative?
I have to do it in the affirmative. So if I have to do it in the affirmative, when I vote no, is that when I put my changes on the record?
No, you've already voiced those changes, so again, I don't think that's a problem for staff to,
Okay, that's not a problem for staff. Okay. All right, then, I'm still going to make the motion in the affirmative. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that this board recommend for approval application LN 692, Healthcare Use Code Text Amendment, creating a hospital-based off-campus emergency room use. Having met review standards for code amendments to the county commission, to the city commission for approval.
Second.
Sorry about that. Wrong board.
So we have a motion and a second. I almost hate to ask this question. Does anybody have any questions about the motion? Okay, seeing none. Bobby, call the roll.
Carla Coleman,
No.
Rich Daly,
No.
Gigi Dubeck,
No.
Paul Fisher,
No.
David Mingus. Into the microphone, please.
No.
Carrie Ann Worley,
No.
Fred Stacer.
Yes. Okay. The motion fails, whatever that is, 6-1. 1, 2, 3, 6 to 1. Okay. All right. All right. That concludes our normal, regular agenda. The next, well, you know what? We'll let these folks head out. Next part's the most exciting. Just kidding. Okay. All right. Next item on our agenda is audience to be heard. Anybody in the audience want to speak on anything that was not on our agenda tonight? Okay.
I appreciate the work of the commission, and it's
Just,
very
sir, just
important for our
your name
Name and address again.
Name and address for the record, please, again.
It's Michael Weir at 2200 Northeast 25th Ave in Pompano Beach, Florida.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And I appreciate the work for our community, but it does not have an effective way of communicating with us. I found out about this issue showing up about 6 hours ago, and everyone in my neighborhood didn't know about it either. And they would have filled the chamber, making their opinions and impact available to you if they had only known. How can we communicate better between the commission and the changes in zoning of the city with the members?
Mrs. Dolan, are you doing something relative to what this gentleman's saying? Oh, okay. As you were moving around, then I thought maybe you were going to put something up. Okay, so this is a text amendment. Text amendments are not advertised. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Now, I know it's not your fault. It used to be that everybody could subscribe to the Sun Sentinel, and they had reporters in these meetings. But with the way the newspapers were consolidated and changed their ownership, they don't have the reporters going out anymore and putting articles there.
Mr. Chair, but
Yes, Mr. Saunders, go ahead.
because it's a code amendment for purposes of this board, there is no specific notice that would be given. But once it reaches the desk of the city commission as an ordinance, there would be notice as any other. It may not be specific to the neighborhood, but it would be, as all of the city's ordinances, there would be required notice that is published.
That would be published in the newspaper again. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I could just.
Sure, go ahead.
This was really this one because it was so site-specific. It was brought by a particular property owner who had a particular use he wanted to.
I understand. The issue came up in 2022 and was overruled, and they spent the time trying to go through by changing the codes instead because they couldn't do it. And
Usually text amendments are not so specific to a particular property. They're more citywide in nature, which is why I was trying to bring this one back to a citywide standard as opposed to an individual property. But I feel your pain, I just don't know how to solve it.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thanks for coming out tonight. Okay. Next item on the agenda is reports by staff. You guys have any reports tonight? Uh-oh. Is that that looks like a first base coach or something. What's going on here? What was that? Is that the hit signal or the bunt?
We had spoke earlier today about Senate Bill 180, which which Carla mentioned earlier. And actually, I just was at the Broward County Planning Council meeting last Thursday, and Andy Morotis was giving his assessment of that one sentence on page 27 of a 28-page bill that was written so broadly that it could be interpreted to apply to any code, regardless of whether it was to rebuild or new development or any site plan or any comp plan, because it's just written in such a broad way. I understand there hasn't been any legal depth poured into this yet. It's not signed by the governor yet, but already APA's come out against it, and everybody is freaking out a little bit about how broad that statement is, that we might not be able to have any code amendments that are burdensome or more restrictive for 3 years because of the way that law is written. Broward Next is just canceled their June meeting with all their new goals, objectives, and policies because they're trying to analyze which ones are more restrictive or burdensome. And with their solution being to either make them incentive-based or not start them until the October 1, 2027 date where that bill expires. So we don't know what's going to happen with that bill. We expect that even if it gets signed, that it will probably get amended once the legislature realizes what a broad statement that is. But anyway, it's something that we're all watching.
Okay. Yeah, you have more faith in them than some of us do.
Yes, than some of us do. You're going to have to be watching every time they meet for somebody slipping something in just to take the 27 out of it.
Okay. All right. So that's staff. No other staff report. Okay.
Go Panthers.
Yeah, they're down 1-0 right now. So yeah.
A lot of game left.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they score 5 goals in period all the time. It doesn't bother them.
And I promised the AV staff we'd be out of here before.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Dally, you have anything for us tonight?
Just want to thank the board tonight. This was actually a really great meeting, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
No report.
Mrs. Coleman?
No report.
Mrs. Worley?
I was going to say it was a great meeting too, and I was going to make it short just so I can get out of here for Bobby. So,
okay.
Panthers.
Sir?
No report.
No report. Mrs. Doe?
No report.
Okay. Believe it or not, I don't have a report either, so there. All right, with that, let's all go Panthers.